Okay, there we go. Boker Tov to everybody, and welcome to Modian's Lavona chapter Hadassah's learning group. We hope that you are enjoying the Shavuot season. It's a beautiful day today on Wednesday, the 28th of May, and our class today will be a historical journey of two sisters, uniting two sisters and the Jewish nation of Israel. And what I'm going to do today, uh, hopefully, is to show you the historical intertwining of the tribes of Israel. You know, in our learning so far, we have seen the um, Shoftim, we've learned about Shmuel, we've learned about the anointing of the first king, and of course, we are very familiar with the Torah. However, do we always put together one thing with another, which becomes, when you weave it together, a most unbelievable narrative and a beautiful, beautiful story of our nation. So here we go. Hold on. I hope that this works. You know, I'm always saying I get these ideas, I put them together, and then I say, is this really going to work? And then I look to see if there's other rabbis, scholars, learned people who have seen the same thing as I have and who have gotten as excited as I have about a particular piece of Jewish history. And once everything is corroborated, I find that this is so exciting. I just want to jump into history and talk to the commentators who talked about this. So I would like to mention that today's lesson I uh, got information and confirmation that I was on a correct track from Yael Ziegler and from um, the there was one other person.
Tanya White? No.
What?
Tanya White?
No,
No.
no. But as soon as I can remember his name, I will
Oh, here.
give it to him, give it to you. So let's get started. Anyway, it starts with Yaakov. Yaakov runs away from his home, escaping the troubles with Esav. As we know, when he got the bracha, he stole the bracha from his brother, and he goes to his mother's uncle's house, the house of Lavan. Lavan has two daughters. He has a daughter, a younger daughter, Rachel, and an older daughter, Leah. Yaakov meets Rachel and falls madly in love with her, and he promises to work for Lavan for 7 years in order to marry this love of his life. So, what happens? As we all know, the story continues, and there is deception on Lavan's part, and he switches Leah under the chuppah for Rachel, and Yaakov marries Leah. Disheartened and probably really, really upset when Yaakov finds this out, he vows to work 7 more years in order to marry his beloved Rachel. After 14 years of working for Lavan, Yaakov, now married to Leah and Rachel, has a situation that we there's a phrase for it called sister wives. He has two sisters
That's
that are
right.
both his wives, and clearly, there cannot be two heads of household under one tent. We find that Rachel yearns for children. We find that Leah yearns for the love of Yaakov.
Mm-hmm.
And and during the course of Jewish history, we will witness the intertwining, the almost ping pong effect of the tribes that these two sisters, the sons that the two sisters produce, and how they go back and forth, sometimes in success, sometimes in failure, one picking up the pieces from another, the other picking up the pieces from another. And finally, we will see how we as a nation can unite and finally become a nation worthy of redemption. Because throughout Jewish
And
history,
here.
the two sisters are constantly tugging at one another through their children. And we see this with jealousy and rivalry. And we finally learn of how in Tanakh, the revelation of a third person will become the person who brings unity and love amongst the Jewish people. Okay, it's here we go, and we're going to go through the history of the Jewish nation. And each time I mention a situation, I'm going to explain who the mother is and what tribe they're from, so that you can see what I'm talking about in this ping pong kind of effect, back and forth, back and forth. Okay? So before we take a look at the history, we're going to take a look at who's who in the stories and, whoops, wait a second, and who these people, who these characters are in in the journey that Jewish history takes. Okay, can everyone see the chart here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so from Yaakov marries Leah. Leah has a handmaiden, a servant, Zilpah, then marries Rachel, and she has a handmaiden, Bilhah. Okay, the first children that come from Yaakov and the union of Yaakov and Leah, here we have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Judah. Now, there comes a time, for some reason, where after Rachel marries Yaakov, that she has no children.
Right.
What happens is she offers Yaakov her handmaiden, who is as if it was Rachel. She feels she is giving herself to Yaakov, and they produce child 5, Dan, and child 6, Naphtali. So after some time, the union of Leah seems to be a bit um, barren for a time. And so Leah gives her handmaiden to Zilpah to Yaakov, and they have child 7, Gad, and child 8, Asher. Now,
Bring us back tonight.
Yaakov then somehow through blessings with Leah has child 9, Issachar, and child 10, Zvulun. In the whole mix, we have Dinah mentioned.
Dina.
I'm sure there were other children, other girl children, but they're not mentioned. And finally, after we know of the terrible yearning and the terrible distress on behalf of Rachel, she has child 11, Yosef, and child 12, Binyamin. So these are the 12 sons of Jacob. They will comprise the 12 tribes of Israel throughout Jewish history. Okay? Should we just call once again? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zvulun, Yosef, and Benjamin. Okay.
Is
Keep
it
that.
possible for you to send that to us?
Sure.
Because that's great. I would love to have that with my notes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Rhonda.
Yes.
Rhonda, excuse me.
Yes. Yes.
Please don't forget that the handmaidens were really half sisters because they were Lavan's daughters, but not from his wife. So they were the Rachel's half sister and Leah's half sister. When you said handmaidens, it's not just anybody; they were their half sisters.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, that's
Thank you for
interesting.
sharing. So when we move on to the story of Jewish history, we find that the first act recorded in the Torah, where all 12 children are involved, and this begins the cycle that I am talking about, this back and forth cycle of the prominence of one sister over another, and then the retreat of one sister and the prominence of the next sister, is when all the brothers decide to sell Yosef.
I knew it.
Uh, Yosef, the beloved, and we know he's beloved. Remember, he gets a coat, a special coat. The beloved son of Yaakov and Rachel, and they sell him to the Ishmaelites on their way to Egypt. Now,
Rhonda,
yes,
Rhonda,
yes.
was Binyamin involved with that? I never thought that he was involved at that time or there in the location with them.
We assume that he knows that what has happened. No one is blameless in this event. So that's why I include him.
Oh, I always thought he was too young to be there. I thought he was at home.
He may have been at home, but he eventually we'll see how he gets involved.
Okay.
Okay. Then Yosef, the son of Rachel, rises. We know that he rises to power in Egypt, and he manages to the country's food during a famine. What happens next is that all the brothers, except for Benjamin, so they're going down to Egypt. Benjamin stays home. He is the now beloved child of Yaakov because Yosef is gone, and Benjamin is from Rachel, who Yaakov loves deeply. The sons go down to Egypt to buy food. Yosef recognizes his brothers, and Yosef, Rachel's son, wants to see his brother Benjamin because he's not with them. And realizing that if they lost, the brothers had lost another one of Rachel's child, the only child left from Rachel, would have caused tremendous problems and deep deep gravity for Yaakov. So they leave him behind, and now Yosef wants to see Benjamin. What is it that happens? Yehuda, Yehuda from Leah stands up and says to when they go back home, I will guarantee the safety of Benjamin. So Leah is standing up for the safety of Rachel at this point. And eventually they go down. The 11 brothers end up in Egypt. And then we know the story. They stay there and they end up in slavery in Egypt. Yosef from Rachel gets the family to come and stay in Egypt. And this fulfills God's prophecy to Abraham. So what happens the whole period of slavery in Mitzrayim, but Rachel, the Yosef, brings the family to Egypt, and who gets them out of Egypt? But Moshe and Aaron from the tribe of Levi, that's the son of Leah, and they take Bnei Israel out of Egypt. Okay? Now, Yehoshua, now once we're in the desert, Yehoshua from the tribe of Ephraim, which is Yosef, Rachel, leads the Israelites in battle with the Amalekites, and that we read about on their way through the desert, on their way to Eretz Yisrael. And it also Yehoshua brings the nation of Israel into Eretz Yisrael. Now, so far, we don't have so much going on here, but what happens is that after the period of Yehoshua, who's from Rachel, and the conquering of the land of Egypt, of Canaan, excuse me, he divides up the land among the tribes. Okay? Now, during that period of time, the Israelites, the Bnei Israel, tried desperately to conquer the land. They're not so successful because they have a propensity for taking on the religious practices, the idolatrous practices of the Canaanites and surrounding nations. They also are very susceptible to intermarriage and to the idolatrous ways and the immorality that is proficient throughout the region. So what happens? Hashem, seeing all of the turmoil that happens between tribes, the fighting and the infighting, that one tribe didn't ask another tribe to join in defending each other. We saw it in the whole Sefer of Shoftim, of the tribes not only fighting external forces, but also fighting each other internally. And it seemed like there was always this rumbling of civil war amongst the tribes until we find that the Shoftim, the period of judges, begins, and uh, the first judge is Othniel ben Kenaz, and he is from the tribe of Yehuda, which is Leah. So we had Yehoshua bring us into the land. He divides up the land. He's from the tribe. He is from Mother Rachel, and now the first judge is from Leah. So now we have Rachel, then Leah, and he is from the tribe of Yehuda, and he is the first shofet, the first judge. During Shoftim, a period of almost 400 years. There is various shoftim that arise and fall throughout that period of time, and there's no particular rhyme or reason in the who takes over and who then falls and someone else takes over. So the period of shoftim, we don't get a window of vision of the two sisters fighting each other or in disarray, but we find that one tribe is rises up through the leadership, military leadership of the Shofet. This goes on for, like I said, for almost 400 years. But while the Shoftim are, I will call, reigning in Eretz Yisrael throughout of all of Israel, there was a side story going on simultaneously. And it's interesting because we have a tendency to have like tunnel vision in Jewish history. You know, we learn a particular sefer, we see the whole thing through, but we don't really see what else is going on at the exact same time. So during the period of Shoftim, the side story
Is
that
Ruth.
is happening
Is
is
Ruth. Is Ruth.
that's
Because it says in the beginning it was
right.
in the time of the judges, etc.
Oh, go girl.
That's it.
So what we find, and how do we know that it's true, that what Linda just told us is true? That in chapter 1 of Ruth, what does it say, Linda? What does it say here?
Now it came to pass in the days when the judges judged. You taught us that. I didn't know that.
Yes. Okay, good
I
for
think you
you.
taught us that last year or the year before.
Okay,
Really.
go ahead.
Oh, that there was a famine in the land, and a man went from Bethlehem of Judah to sojourn in the fields of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons.
Okay, so here we read the story that is happening during the period of Shoftim. Okay, so while the judges are judging, Elimelech takes his family and leaves Bethlehem, which is in Judah, the tribe of Judah. The Judah is Leah, okay, and he goes to, of all places, Moab. Moab. Now, what do we know about Moab? Moab means from my father. It's this story that gets the name from Lot and his 2 daughters who escaped the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And what happens is they name it, they have children with their father, the daughters, and it's called Moab, from my father. Okay. So, and we're told we should not become like the Moabites, and we should not be part of the we should not marry the Moabites and bring them into our nation. However, all things cannot be just straightforward. We find that during this period of time that the sons of Elimelech and the father himself die, and the mother, the wife of Elimelech, says to her daughters-in-law, "There's nothing left for you here. Go back to your homeland, and I will go back to my homeland. There's nothing to be done here." But what we find is that Ruth says, "No, I will become part of your family and we will go back home together. She is the shining star of the story, and her praiseworthy behavior gets her a very special role in um, in the story of the Jewish nation. Now, we find that once Ruth and Nomi have gone back to uh, Bethlehem, Nomi wants to have Ruth marry the closest relative, who is this guy that does not want to marry Ruth. So the next available male in the family who can marry Ruth is
Boaz.
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 Okay.
Boaz.
Okay. Now, something very interesting happens in the story of Ruth and Boaz that I am sure that if I didn't point this out, most of you would probably just read it as part of the story. Ruth is so filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, the beauty and love of Hashem. And she wants to become part of this nation, and she wants to go into the fields and glean the wheat with the poor people, and she wants to get the attention of this man called Boaz who owns the field. And when he speaks to her, she's modest and she's kind. And eventually we find out that she goes to the threshing floor one night, and Boaz says to her, what are you doing here? And she had probably every intention of starting some type of relationship with him. And he says, we are going to do this correctly. We're going to go to the elders and we're going to get married in a proper way. He's going to ask permission of the first person in line to marry her for permission to make sure he doesn't want to marry Ruth, and then he's going to tell Ruth that and the elders that they're going to get married. So what happens is the story of Ruth contains within it the ability to mend the rift of Rachel and Leah. How so? Okay. So let me show you. Hold on. Here we go. Right before they get married, they're standing together, Ruth and Boaz. And this is from chapter 4 of Ruth. It says, and the nation in the gates, means all the people, and the elders, everyone is standing there. They're going to watch what's happening. They're standing there as said. This is what they said to Ruth and Boaz. Well, they actually say it to Boaz while Ruth is standing there. God shall place this woman who is coming into your house as Rachel and Leah, who built, the two of them, the house of Israel, and does valor in Ephrat, and calls a name in Bethlehem. In other words, just like Rachel and Leah, who came from unworthy and devious background, Lavan, this woman also who comes from a Moab, the deviousness and a nation that we don't think highly of, comes in. She should come into your house just like Rachel and Leah, who built the house of Israel on their worthy, valorous deeds and their worthy, meritorious actions. That she in the Ephrat and Beit Lechem, she Ruth should be like Rachel and Leah. Okay, do you see how we have a third woman who is going to do something unbelievable for Bnei Yisrael? And here, within the book of Ruth, the Megillat Ruth, we see that the blessing that she should be to Boaz, as Rachel and Leah was to Yaakov, will come true. Okay? Now we're going to go back. Okay. So here we have this story of Ruth happening. We know we know that the union of Boaz and Ruth produces a son, Oved, and
Jesse.
And Oved has Jesse.
Jesse.
Jesse has
David.
David. Okay. All right. So who is the mother of the Davidic line?
Ruth.
Ruth.
Netzevet.
What?
Netzevet is the mother of David HaMelech.
Yes, but I'm talking about the tribal background. We don't get the tribal from the mother.
No, I beg your pardon.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. So what happens here is that Ruth is the mother of the Davidic line, and she fulfills the prophecy of Yaakov when he gave the blessings to his 12 sons, that there will be kings that come from Yehuda. Yehuda being the tribe, the mother was Leah. So then we say to ourselves, well, if that's the case, that the kingships are going to be from Leah, from the tribe of Yehuda, then what has happened, and we're learning this as we speak in Sefer Shmuel, then what has happened with the first king who is anointed, who is Benjamin? Benjamin from
Rachel.
Rachel, exactly. Well, we found out last time that we met that the kingship was given to the tribe of Benjamin, to Shaul,
Right.
as almost a tikkun, a repair for the terrible civil war that was caused by the tribes killing off almost the entire tribe of Benjamin in the story of the Pelegesh Begivah, the concubine of Givah. God wants to tell Bnei Yisrael, even though you saved the final destruction of Benjamin from terrible, terrible consequences of possibly ending one of the tribes. You saved that tribe. I want you to know that the tribe of Benjamin is just as important as all of you. So God says the first person who is going to be king is from the tribe of Benjamin, the house of Rachel, and he, Shaul, will be king. All right. We know that it doesn't work out so well, right?
Right.
That that Shaul, even though he is called head and shoulders above everyone else, whether it's head and shoulders of his good looks, head and shoulders of his righteousness and his belief in God and the Torah, both things considered create the right climate for God to have Shmuel, who is from the tribe of Levi, from Leah, anoints the first king, Shaul, from the tribe of Benjamin, Rachel. Okay, you got that? Leah anoints Rachel. Okay, now, had everything been perfect in a perfect world, it is possible that David, who comes, that's Leah, Yehuda, and Yonatan, the son of Shaul, Rachel, who were best friends, we know they were best friends, we're going to learn that in Sefer Shmuel, had everything gone 100%, we probably would have had a king Yonatan, because it would have gone to Shaul's son. But it didn't go well. And because Shaul fails in the eyes of God, Shaul cannot be the progenitor of the monarchy. So at that time, Shaul, who is Rachel, fails to step up to be the monarchy dynasty, and it goes to David. David from the tribe of Yehuda, which is Leah. Okay? So it's interesting how this has gone back and forth, back and forth. And now, after, and those of you who have been with me for many years and we've learned Malachim, kings, we know that after David, who will be forever the monarchy, the tribe of kingship, we know that Shlomo HaMelech from David, and that's from Mother Leah, becomes the next king of the nation of Israel. And after Shlomo, his son is the last king of the United Kingdom of Israel. After him, Yeravam, from the tribe of Ephraim, which is Rachel, splits the kingdom and goes to the north with a variety of tribes. The kingdom of the south, which is ruled by the Davidic line, and that is Leah, is the nation of the kingdom of the south. So now what has happened is, once again in Jewish history, the sisters have split. The northern kingdom is Rachel, the southern kingdom is Leah, and the nation is at odds with itself. It is not united, not religiously, politically, spiritually. There is no union here amongst the tribes. Now, we know that the northern kingdom is conquered by the Assyrians and is sent into exile and is lost. That is Rachel. Rachel children are exiled. And what happens with that exile? The second exile, we know, comes along after a while. And the second exile also from Benjamin and Yehuda, both Rachel and Leah, are conquered by the Babylonians, and they are sent into exile to Babylon and eventually to Persia. So what do we read in Yirmiyahu that is so poignant here? We read that here. Do you see this? Can you see this? Can Lori, can you read this for me, please?
Yes. Thus said Hashem, a cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Jeremiah 31:14.
Okay. When Bnei Yisrael goes into exile, Rachel is weeping. She is beside herself. Her beloved children, and she considers all of Bnei Yisrael her children. She weeps mercilessly for the exile of her people, of her children. And we find that in exile, the story even continues. The story becomes that in Persia, remember, we are dispersed to Babylon. In Babylon is conquered by the Persian Empire. What story comes out of the Persian Empire? Anybody?
The story of Ruth.
Ruth. Oh, no, not
Sorry,
Ruth.
sorry, Esther.
Esther. The story of Esther. And what tribe is Mordecai and Esther from?
Benjamin.
Benjamin. Who is
Benjamin.
that? Who's the mother?
Rachel.
Benjamin
Rachel.
is Rachel. Yeah.
Rachel. So Rachel is going to bring redemption of some sort of her children in Persia. And she is going to save the destruction of the children of Israel who are left, the remnant that is left in Persia. And what happens is, who rises to power? But Esther marries Ahasuerus. And who comes from the union of Esther, from the Rachel, mother Rachel, and Ahasuerus? King Darius, who is Rachel, and he says, he allows, when he becomes king after Ahasuerus, he allows the Jews to return home to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. Rachel is bringing her children home. Okay? Interesting. Now, the leader of the first return of Bnei Yisrael from Persia was Ezra. We studied the book of Ezra. Ezra was from the tribe of Levi. That's Leah. So Rachel, who is Esther and King Darius, allows the people to come home under the leadership of Leah, who is Ezra. The second return to Eretz Yisrael is through Nehemiah, and he is also by Leah. So Leah is going to actually lead the return once the house of Rachel redeems the children of Israel from the Persian monarchy. Now, during the Greek, the next period of time, in the land of Israel, the Greek occupation of Israel, the families of Mattatyahu, the Maccabees, is from the tribe of Yehuda. That is the family of Leah, and they helped defeat the Greeks. Now, the Romans come in after they destroy the Greeks, and the second temple is destroyed, and the king, as well as King Herod, who was appointed by the Romans, and the diaspora of the Bnei Israel begins. The thousands of years in exile begins. So we see how back and forth, Leah, Rachel, Leah, Rachel, Leah, Rachel, and yet what throughout history we find that Rachel is always concerned about her children, and in the end, this is what God says to her in her weeping. Here we go.
Wow.
Susan, can you read this?
Wow. That's amazing.
Susan?
Sorry, couldn't unmute. God promises Rachel that those tears are not for naught, but rather there is a reward for your labor, and your children shall return to their country.
Okay, so God tells Rachel, your children are going to come home. They're going to be able to come home. And throughout the centuries, years and years, Rachel has seen the comings and goings. They're coming home, they're being exiled again. They're coming, they're exiled. But she is always, always praised for the children of Israel. So she, Rachel, becomes the matriarch, the spiritual mother of the entire nation of Israel. And her cries and tears yield a promise for deliverance and redemption. Now, Malbim, the commentator, says, isn't it interesting that the fact that Ruth, Rachel and Leah, and I mentioned this before, come from disreputable backgrounds, okay? And despite having been raised in Laban's house, Rachel and Leah build worthy houses for themselves and their families. Ruth, from a disreputable country, comes and her national identity lurks behind her, but she is able to rise up and to maintain and enter the house of Israel and build a house of Israel. So, what is it that the commentators find so interesting? That when we think of redemption and the honor of living in the house of Israel, we think of Leah, who longed for love. She wanted Yaakov to love her. And we think of Rachel, who longed for children and had such a difficult time having children in a marriage. And we think of Ruth, an outsider who enters the house of Israel of her own volition. And Rachel will be given the title of spiritual mother of the children of Israel by God. And as she watches their exile from Israel, from here her eternal resting place in Beit Lechem. Beit Lechem, where Ruth comes from, where the story of Ruth comes from. She weeps for the Jewish children in exile and the troubles that they go through, and prays for their safe return home. Leah will be given the honor of being laid to rest in Hebron,
Right.
next to her beloved Yaakov, and she will be given in death what she didn't get in life, to be by the side of her Yaakov. A place by Yaakov's side is all that Leah wanted. And while each woman gets in death what they did not have in life, the honor of uniting these two households comes from Ruth, because while she marries Boaz, who is from Yehuda, Leah, what happens when David becomes king? David places the kingdom, the physical kingdom, on the border of the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Yehuda. He unites Benjamin, Mother Rachel, and he unites Leah, from tribe of Yehuda. And in this unity, the 12 tribes come together from Ruth. So, in the end, the tale of Rachel and Leah, the tale of two sisters, is more than a story of ancient history. It is a living testament to the strength of character, the power of prayer, and the resilience of a nation. Their journey throughout history that we've seen, this back and forth, this journey that takes us throughout our special history, speaks to us today, using urging us to cherish our relationships, embrace our companions and compassion, and our love of God, of Torah, of Eretz Yisrael, and we should unite in the face of challenges throughout life, that our children and our grandchildren should come together like Ruth brought us together under the Davidic dynasty. We should all work together going forward in our union rather than our separation and our fighting, and that through unity and through the working of both sisters and the woman who comes from the outside, Ruth, who unites the two sisters, through these tears, this love, and this compassion for the Jewish nation, we should be an indelible mark on our children as returnees from the diaspora that Rachel so much cried for and hoped that we would come home. And we have become, all of us, returnees to Eretz Yisrael under the tears and joy of the family of Rachel and her love for her people and her children. And so I wish you a very beautiful Shavuot, that when you hear the story of Ruth, you will think of these three women and how they changed the course of Jewish history, and how they became role models in so many ways for all of us. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you. That's
What
wonderful.
a wonderful, what an interesting and lovely connection. Never would have occurred to me. That's great, Rhonda. Thank you.
You're
That was
welcome.
lovely. That
Thank
was
you
really
so
lovely.
much. Very, very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Does anyone have any questions? I'm